I know. I said this would be a weekly series, and I missed a week. But in my defense, it was Christmas weekend, and I was kind of always going to take it off. And I think that falls in line with exactly what what I want to talk about in this episode of Liminal Musings. This is a classic gameplay commentary style series where I just kind of talk about life and stuff over top some gameplay, like we did back in the early 2000s. I think it's more relevant today than ever, and it's more needed today than ever. And that's what we're doing here. And I want to talk about the idea that there is always tomorrow. This sounds really obvious, and technically is not true. You could die tomorrow. You could die today. Something could happen. But broadly speaking, there will always be tomorrow. And I think this is very important, especially for creators, anyone trying to do anything online, or anyone trying to do something kind of inspired by or influenced by, I said that weird, influenced by people who are online. We get all these pressures, all these images of people supposedly working hard, hashtag grinding, hustling, whatever, at the thing they do and showing off the amazing results. And people have already talked to death about how, all of that is filtered through the positivity bias of social media sharing and all of that. You don't need me to explain that to you. But, you only see the best of people. But what you also only see is the highlights of them working. You don't see the time they take off. And this influences a lot of people, even if they think they're immune to this kind of stuff. It puts pressure on everyone to just keep working even when you shouldn't, to not take any time off, to squeeze in every extra hour. You've got the super toxic hustle culture going on right now, trying to convince everyone to work your weekends and nights away to achieve your dreams. And in many cases, that extra 1% gain, or in reality 0.001% gain you might get from working over a holiday or missing a birthday or not taking a breather for yourself, rarely does that make up the detriment to your personal life, the disappointment of your family for not showing up, the health concerns of stressing yourself out or working so hard constantly. Rarely do you make that up, especially when it comes to like doing YouTube and stuff. And a creator that I have followed for most of my career in terms of what I do now, not my entire career, but for years and years, just announced that they're effectively quitting. And they had employees even that they gave plenty of notice in advance, that they're shutting down operations and whatever. And they've had a lot bad stuff happen this year that frankly would make them kind of shut down potentially anyway. But they announced that they're just kind of quitting, that they're potentially coming back and sharing stuff later, but that they really need a break and that they're just going to stop for a while. And that they're letting their employees find other work and that they're just quitting effectively. They're burnt out. That they have worked through every holiday and never taken a vacation more than a day or so or whatever. And this kind of set with me. I am someone who doesn't care much for burnout stories. I am someone who has worked at YouTube for over half of my life. I've worked at it since 2007 in some way or another. Worked really hard at it from 2010 onwards. It took me a long time to get where I'm at. Longer than most people. I only get up and do this every day and grind away at it every day because I know that it's what I was put on this earth to do in some fashion or form, what I'm doing now. And that the results I get are just my own path. Not everyone has the same path. Not everyone grows the same in the same speed. And I'm doing things differently than a lot of people. And I'm okay with that. I've come to peace with that. But that also means that I deal with burnout a lot differently than people who think of this as a gold rush, a get-rich-quick scheme, or people who don't have the same motivations, for people who just want to do it for fun and didn't consider the stresses and demands of doing it as a job. And that's okay. Everyone deals with things differently. But I get really tired of the same old, boo-hoo, I'm burned out of YouTube. I need to take a break because I never knew how to take a break, or I don't have a work ethic, blah, blah, blah. I'm someone who rolls his eyes at all the tweets about how we need to make more room to talk about burnout more. Meanwhile, I feel like most of the streaming and content creation scene never stops talking about it. But yet this story hit me in a really weird way. I think in part because it was so unexpected. It was a creator and eventually a group of creators that had been going for a very long time, that seem to have a sustainable system in place that I assumed would have taken vacations or breaks or whatever they needed to do, because they're not in a position that I see from the outside that they had any reason not to. All of these things that from the outside, I would have just assumed they were trucking along and doing fine. And they weren't. And they were doing all of this. And I think it finally highlighted some of the issues I struggle with. Because a lot of the people that get burned out are like, you know, I don't know how to say it diplomatically, but they're not burning out for the same reasons that people who have worked at it as long as I have, or as the channel that I'm talking about has, or whatever has. They burn out a lot more superficially, or because they're not getting the results they wanted, rather than like they're not as motivated for the work. And that's fine. Again, I'm not here to judge. I'm just saying, like, I don't typically see the kind of burnout I saw in this creator, because it truly was an element of what they set out to do stopped being fulfilling. And it's because of their move to management and a bunch of other things. But the idea, like, when I watched the story and watched the video and heard the story about how they were working through holidays and how they got to a more management position or whatever, it very much reminded me of myself this past year. At the start of 2023, I had a lot going on, and financially, I was absolutely just devastated for a couple different reasons. And I had to let the editor I was working with go. There were some other reasons that went into it that I was pretty much already going to let him go anyway. But when I stopped being able to afford to give him work, that was obviously the line. I had already spent the past like 3 months basically paying him off of credit. And I ran out of credit to pay him from. And so I had discovered through the process what I'm getting at in the past year of working with him. So 2022. That as much as it felt freeing to be able to feel like I'm accomplishing more because I passed off that creative work to someone else and could just focus on ideating videos or doing admin stuff or whatever. The admin stuff, the sales stuff, the email management, the behind the scenes stuff, all of that was the stuff I did not like to do. I got into this to be creative, to put my own art out there, to do editing, to do the fun stuff. And passing that off to someone else so I can be, you know, quote unquote, a CEO or something. Absolutely not what I wanted out of this job. And the same applied to the channel that announced that they were quitting. They ran into the same thing where they were doing more management work than creative work, and that is not what they were passionate about and what they got into it for. But it also finally made me look seriously at the fact that I did actually work through most holidays in some way. Now, this has not been the case for the past few years since I had a kid. But prior to having a kid, I was working, even if it was just a couple hours squeezing in. And actually, I say not since having a kid, but even this past Christmas and Thanksgiving, I would be lying if I told you I wasn't popping up on my phone and replying to tweets, checking emails if they came in, doing a little work there, checking YouTube comments. That's still work. That's part of the job. And frankly, those are, again, part of the not fun parts of the job. I would have rather been filming a fun gaming video or something if I'm going to work on a holiday. I was doing the unfun part of the job, and I still do check in on holidays for it and stuff. And it made me finally face the fact that even if I could sit here and tell people, you don't need to do that, I'm doing it. And it absolutely negatively affects me. And I don't believe in New Year's resolutions, but one of the things I want to get hardcore about in 2024 is not doing that. Because, circling back to the point of this video, way too long into it, I don't know why you all listen to this, but your all's comments and chat on these videos have been so incredible. I'm obviously keeping them going. Circling back to the point of that, there is always tomorrow. There is not a single thing I could do on a Christmas, on a Thanksgiving, on a birthday, on a day where I'm just too exhausted and burned out and just like stressed and panicking and not able to sleep or whatever. There is nothing I could do in that one day that's going to make or break my career. Like, yes, in some unrealistic scenario, if I got an email saying, hey, we have some $100,000 sponsorship for you, you need to respond right away, I would need to respond. But beyond that, and that's an unrealistic scenario. I've had some last minute sponsorship requests, but never that like game changing in reality. Beyond that, there is nothing I can do to make it worth working on a holiday. if there's a video with a deadline that I'm not going to be able to make because it's right next to a holiday and I can't work that holiday, I just need to tell the sponsor or whatever, we need to bump it a day or two. Otherwise, normal videos, there's no deadline in the world that's going to be worth working through that. All-nighters, not worth it. And as someone who has done reviews and everything for a very long time, even hitting review embargoes, if it requires all-nighters, is rarely worth it. Viewers at this point would rather have more thought out, more methodical, more time spent with the thing than rushing to get day one out anyway. But especially for a channel like the one that I'm thinking of, that I watched that video from that quit. You know, if you're not dependent on deadlines and embargoes and whatever, like, there is absolutely nothing you can do in any one given day that is going to make or break your success. And therefore, working through a holiday, working through a birthday, working through a personal moment is insane. Now, it's the natural inclination. We are pressured by the systems we work within. YouTube, the algorithm, the analytics we look at, social media, the constant fleeting cycle, blah, 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 all of that. We are pressured into doing it because it feels like we're missing out and we're losing numbers if we don't. But in reality, missing a day, especially a holiday where most of your viewers are going to be doing something else, or a birthday, which should just mean something to you, or just a personal day of importance that you would rather live down, there's nothing that can happen that would change the direction of your career, that would make your success, that you are missing out on. There is always tomorrow. You'll always be able to pick it up tomorrow and continue where you left off. You're not going to miss out. There are so few things that you could that could happen or that you could miss out on that would really make that big of a difference to ever make it worth it. Ever, 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 ever. It does not seem that way, especially if you're in the thick of it, if you're in the weeds, if you're growing and you're like, every video I pop off, I'm getting success. I cannot sacrifice that momentum. I promise you. I've been doing this more years than half of my viewers have been alive. It's not true. And even if you do, you lose a little bit of momentum. In 6 months, you're going to look back. You're going to think the videos you're posting now sucks. And you're going to regret missing out on that holiday or that birthday or that date or hanging out with friends. You're going to miss out. Anytime you jump forward in time and look back, you are going to regret missing out on the real life stuff more than posting the content or doing the work. Because work is just that. It is work. Now, it's different. If you're really passionate about a project, if this is your art form, which it is for me, so I totally understand. I'm not knocking it. Like, if this is your art form and you're so passionate, and especially if you're a neurodivergent type like me, like you are hyper fixated on this thing and you just want to finish it overnight because that's the work schedule you maintain, or you don't really care about that holiday and you weren't going to anything anyway and you'd rather just do the fun thing, that's totally fine. I'm not saying not to do that. I'm just saying not to pressure yourself into missing out on a thing you want to do or that you probably should do because you think you're going to miss out on internet fame or stardom or something. You're not. Period. I'm making this video as much for myself. I wish I had watched this 10, 15 years ago and actually had it stick to heart, as well as for anyone else who's aspiring to do, like I said, anything online. It's not just content creation. It's not just streaming. It's not any sort of online work or any work that is influenced by the pressures of, is pressured by influences of other people doing it online and feeling like you're missing out. Please listen to this. Please share it with someone that you might think is, I guess, overworking themselves or something. Just let them know. Just send them a thought. Tell them Addy sent you. This is Lost Saves. Liminal Musings is the series. Playlist, podcasts, all that jazz linked below. Shoot me an email or fill out the Google form if you have a specific question you want answered or a topic you want to see talked about. Go check out this video to hear my thoughts on why E3 shutting down is actually a huge bummer and potentially detrimental to the games industry. And remember to be kind, rewind.